AITA for canceling New Year's Eve at my house after the Christmas we just had. I was amazed by my sister's antics. This year, the plan was for me, 30M, to host New Year's Eve for my family. It was a big deal because I've never hosted a major holiday before. My parents, my two sisters, 35F and 33F, their husbands, and their 5 kids, ages 5, 6, 8, 9, and 11, were all set to come to my place. We decided this arrangement earlier in the year, and everyone seemed pretty happy with it. My sister, 33F, was hosting Christmas, and the idea was that we'd alternate responsibilities to spread the workload. Christmas at her place was an absolute disaster, though, and it made me question whether I wanted to go through with hosting New Year's at all. It started out relatively normal, or at least I thought it would. We arrived at her house at around 2 p.m. on Christmas Day. My parents and I brought over gifts, as did my other sister and her family. The plan was to exchange presents, play some games, have a nice dinner, and enjoy the holiday together. You know, the usual warm and fuzzy family stuff. For the first hour or so, things were fine. We opened presents, and the kids were excited about their new toys. My parents and I tried to keep up with the chaos of kids running around while chatting with my sisters and their husbands. At some point, we broke out a couple of board games to keep things calm while dinner was being prepared. Everything seemed to be going as expected. But then, things started to unravel. My 33-year-old sister, let's call her Lisa, is really into acting. She's done a lot of community theater over the years, but it's not her job. She works as a barista. That's totally fine, of course, but lately, she's been trying to encourage her kids to get into acting too. They're apparently obsessed with that Netflix show, I Think You Should Leave with Tim Robinson. If you've seen it, you know it's a very chaotic and absurd kind of comedy, but apparently, Lisa thinks it's pure genius and wants her kids to embrace that energy. Right before dinner, things took a turn. The 3 older kids, 8, 9, and 11, decided to perform one of their favorite sketches from the show. It's the one where the guys are doing pranks with toilets, except their pranks involved literally splashing toilet water onto the bathroom floor. These kids were running in and out of the bathroom, screaming at the top of their lungs, pretending to be pranksters, and sloshing water everywhere. It wasn't just a little puddle, it was like they had taken half the toilet bowl and decided it belonged on the tile. My parents and I were horrified. My dad actually got up and told them to stop, but Lisa laughed and waved him off, saying, "Oh, come on, Dad, it's just comedy. Let them be creative." My mom looked like she was about to pass out. Meanwhile, the rest of us were standing there in disbelief, trying to process the fact that Lisa thought this was acceptable behavior in any universe. It only got worse. Dinner was supposed to be the centerpiece of the evening. Lisa had promised a full spread. Instead, the chaos continued. The kids started reenacting another sketch from the show, screaming, "Where is all the food going? Who is eating all the food?" They started grabbing handfuls of food from the serving dishes and shoveling it into their mouths while throwing bits onto the floor. It was absolute madness. Food was flying everywhere, and the dining table looked like a bomb had gone off. At one point, one of the kids accidentally knocked over a full pitcher of water onto the floor, which mixed with the leftover toilet water and created a swamp in the middle of the dining room. The only people laughing were Lisa and her kids. She thought the whole thing was hysterical. She kept saying things like, "Isn't this great? They're so talented." Meanwhile, the rest of us were staring at the ruins of what was supposed to be Christmas dinner. The turkey was on the floor, mashed potatoes were smeared across the table, and the vegetables had somehow ended up in the kids' hair. The younger kids, 5 and 6, were crying because they didn't understand what was going on, and my parents looked like they wanted to leave right then and there. We ended up ordering pizza because dinner was completely ruined. While waiting for the delivery, Lisa went on a long rant about how she's encouraging her kids to pursue their passions, and how she thinks they're going to have a bright future in comedy. She even said she wants to start a YouTube channel for them so they can do sketches. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My other sister, the 35-year-old, tried to step in and suggest that maybe Christmas wasn't the best time for all this, but Lisa brushed her off and accused her of being boring. By the time we finally got to eat the pizza, the mood was completely ruined. My parents were silent, and my other sister looked like she was barely holding it together. As for me, I was sitting there thinking about how I was supposed to host New Year's Eve in a week. All I could picture was Lisa and her kids tearing my house apart. I have a nice home that I've worked hard to keep clean and organized, and there was no way I was going to let them destroy it in the name of comedy. After we left, I sent Lisa a message telling her that New Year's Eve at my place was going to be adults only. I explained that I didn't want to risk my house being turned into a disaster zone like her place. She did not take it well. She called me immediately and started yelling, accusing me of being judgmental and saying I was trying to stifle her kids' creativity. She kept insisting that what they did on Christmas was hilarious and that I was overreacting. I stood my ground and told her that if she wanted to bring the kids, they'd need to behave, and that sketches would not be happening in my home. That set her off even more. She said I was being ridiculous, that the kids are just being kids, and that I'm acting like a control freak. She also told me that if her kids weren't welcome, she wouldn't come at all. Now my parents are caught in the middle. They agree with me that Christmas was a disaster, but they think I should just let it go for the sake of keeping the peace. My other sister is on my side and said she wouldn't want them acting like that in her house either, but she also thinks it might not be worth the drama to fight Lisa over it. So now I'm torn. On one hand, I don't want my house destroyed, and I don't think it's unreasonable to set boundaries. On the other hand, I'm wondering if I'm overreacting by canceling the kids' invitation altogether. AITA for trying to protect my home and my sanity after the Christmas we just had. Update 1. After reading everyone's feedback on my situation and doing some serious soul-searching, I realized I wasn't ready to completely uninvite Lisa and her kids without at least trying to work things out. I genuinely wanted to keep the peace in the family, especially since this was supposed to be a time for celebrating together, not falling apart. So, I decided to organize a family meeting to address the situation head-on. Given how spread out we are in everyone's schedules, we opted for a Zoom call. My hope was to establish some clear boundaries for New Year's Eve and see if we could come to a compromise. When the call started, most of the family joined on time, my parents, my other sister and her husband, and even Lisa's husband, who honestly didn't seem too thrilled to be there but was at least polite. Lisa, however, joined about 10 minutes late, looking visibly annoyed as if the whole thing was a waste of her time. I could tell right away that this wasn't going to go smoothly, but I tried to stay optimistic. I calmly explained why I wanted to have this discussion. I told everyone that after what happened at Christmas, I felt like we needed to set some expectations for New Year's to avoid a repeat of the chaos. Almost immediately, Lisa went on the defensive. She claimed I was blowing everything out of proportion and started making passive-aggressive comments like, "I'm sorry my kids are more creative than everyone else's boring children." That comment was clearly aimed at my other sister's kids, who are younger and more on the quiet, well-behaved side. My other sister didn't say anything, but I could see her bristling in her little Zoom square. It was a tense start, to say the least. Still, I pressed on. I explained that my issue wasn't with her kids being creative, but with the complete lack of respect for other people's homes and events. I brought up the toilet water, the food being thrown everywhere, and how the whole thing had essentially ruined Christmas dinner. My parents chimed in at this point, agreeing that it had been out of control and that some boundaries needed to be set. I could see Lisa's irritation growing with every word, but for a brief moment, I thought we might actually be getting somewhere. She begrudgingly said she'd talk to her kids about behaving and even promised there'd be no sketches at New Year's. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was better than nothing. And then, out of nowhere, her 11-year-old son popped into the frame. He was grinning from ear to ear and, with perfect comedic timing, yelled, "We're bringing the toilets to New Year's. It's going to be hilarious." Lisa burst out laughing, completely ignoring the stunned silence from everyone else on the call. My parents looked horrified, my other sister rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might get stuck, and I just sat there, dumbfounded. That was the moment I realized Lisa wasn't taking any of this seriously. All her talk about talking to her kids, and no sketches, had been meaningless. She clearly thought this whole situation was a joke. I ended the call shortly after that, firmly stating that New Year's Eve at my house would be adults only. Lisa hung up in a huff, but I thought that was the end of it. I figured she'd either come without her kids or just skip the event altogether. Either way, I thought I had handled the situation as diplomatically as possible. Boy, was I wrong. Update 2. 2 days before New Year's Eve, I was finishing up some last-minute preparations for the small, adults-only gathering I was hosting. I had just finalized the menu and cleaned up my house when I heard the sound of a delivery truck outside. I wasn't expecting any packages, but I went to the door anyway, curious. Sure enough, there was a large box sitting on my front porch. It had no markings other than my address, and there was no return label or company logo. My first thought was that it might be a surprise gift from one of my friends or family members. But as I stood there looking at it, I felt a creeping sense of unease. Something about it just seemed off. Curiosity got the better of me, so I grabbed a box cutter and opened it right there on my porch. The first thing that hit me was the smell, not overpowering, but enough to make me cringe. I peeled back the flaps of the box, and there it was, a toilet. An actual toilet. It wasn't new, either. This thing had clearly been used at some point, though thankfully it looked like someone had at least cleaned it before shipping it to me. It wasn't broken or cracked, but it was scratched and scuffed, and the bolts that should have held it to a bathroom floor were rusted. It looked like it had been ripped straight out of someone's house. For a moment, I just stood there, staring at it in disbelief. My mind raced as I tried to figure out what kind of sick joke this was. There was no note, no explanation, no indication of who had sent it. But I didn't need one. Deep down, I knew exactly who was behind it. Lisa. I was furious. This wasn't just immature, it was downright creepy and unsettling. What kind of person sends a toilet to someone's house as a joke? And the more I thought about it, the more questions I had. Where on earth did she even get it? Did she pull it out of a dumpster somewhere? Steal it from someone's curb during bulk trash pickup? Or did she actually go to the trouble of buying a used toilet just to mock me? The thought of her hauling it around, laughing at how hilarious her prank was going to be, made my blood boil. This wasn't just a silly joke, it was a calculated, deliberate attempt to mock me and undermine the boundaries I had set for New Year's Eve. The message was crystal clear: you don't want my kids and their toilet sketches at your party? Fine, here's a toilet anyway. It was as petty as it was infuriating. For a few minutes, I just stood there, staring at the box like it might somehow explain itself. The absurdity of the situation was almost overwhelming. A toilet. An actual, used toilet. Sitting in a box on my porch. I kept glancing at my neighbors' houses, half worried that someone had seen the delivery and was now watching me with amusement or judgment. I didn't want to leave it there for even another second. What if someone walked by and saw it? The last thing I needed was to become the neighborhood's running joke. With a frustrated sigh, I dragged the box into my garage, trying not to think about how the thing clunked and rattled inside as I moved it. The idea of leaving it outside, in plain view, was mortifying. Once I had shoved the box into the far corner of the garage, I grabbed my phone and called Lisa. I didn't even hesitate, I was too angry to second-guess myself. She answered almost immediately, and I could tell from the tone of her voice that she had been expecting this. She sounded cheerful, too cheerful, like she was barely containing her laughter. The second I mentioned the toilet, her laughter spilled over, loud and unashamed. It wasn't just a laugh, it was one of those belly laughs, like she thought this was the funniest thing in the world. The sound of her amusement only fueled my anger, making me feel like the butt of some elaborate joke I hadn't agreed to be a part of. She denied everything, of course, but her tone told me everything I needed to know. She kept claiming she had no idea what I was talking about, but the way her voice wavered with suppressed laughter made it obvious she was lying. I could practically picture her face, smug and delighted, as she tried to act innocent. Every sarcastic comment she made, every little giggle she failed to stifle, was like pouring gasoline on my already blazing fury. By the end of the call, she had the audacity to brush the whole thing off with some vague nonsense about how someone out there must really love comedy. The sheer nerve of it left me speechless. After the call, I was left standing in my garage, staring at the ridiculous, disgusting object taking up space like an unwelcome guest. What was I supposed to do with it? I couldn't just throw it in the trash, the thing was too big, and I doubted the garbage collectors would even take it. Plus, the thought of dragging it out to the curb, where all my neighbors could see it, made my stomach turn. I didn't want to deal with the embarrassment of explaining why there was suddenly a toilet sitting outside my house. After pacing back and forth for a while, muttering to myself in frustration, I finally decided to call a junk removal service. The conversation was mortifying. I had to explain that, yes, someone had sent me a used toilet, and yes, I needed them to come and haul it away. The guy on the other end of the line sounded baffled but professional, and we arranged for them to pick it up the next day. Of course, this meant I had to pay out of pocket to deal with Lisa's childish stunt. The thought of spending my own money to get rid of her so-called joke only made me angrier. It felt like a slap in the face, like she had not only disrespected my boundaries but also forced me to clean up her mess, literally and figuratively. By the time the evening rolled around, I was emotionally drained. I spent hours alternating between seething rage and disbelief that Lisa would stoop so low. The next morning, the junk removal guys came and took the toilet off my hands. They didn't say much, but the look on their faces made it clear they thought the situation was bizarre. I couldn't blame them. Once it was gone, I felt a little better, but the damage was done. Lisa's childish stunt had cemented my decision. There was no way her kids, or she, for that matter, were coming anywhere near my house for New Year's. I was done trying to compromise. Her actions had made it clear that she had no respect for me, my home, or my boundaries. As New Year's Eve approached, I started getting texts from my mom again. She had heard about the toilet incident, probably from Lisa, and was pleading with me to let it go for the sake of the family. She said Lisa felt misunderstood and that the prank was all in good fun. I told her that sending a used toilet to someone's house wasn't fun, it was disgusting and disrespectful. My mom sighed and said she understood but wished I could find it in my heart to forgive Lisa and invite her and the kids to the party. I stood firm. My other sister, who was just as horrified by the toilet stunt as I was, sent me a supportive text saying I was absolutely doing the right thing. Update 3. After the toilet fiasco, I thought I had braced myself for whatever antics Lisa might try to pull next. I'd set firm boundaries, dealt with her passive-aggressive texts, and endured her attempts to paint me as the villain of the family. I figured she'd either show up uninvited and throw a tantrum when I turned her away or stew in her own frustration at home. But then, this morning, my other sister, the 35-year-old, called with some unsettling news that threw me completely off balance. Apparently, Lisa had been venting to her about my uptight attitude and the ridiculous adults-only rule for New Year's Eve. My other sister has been trying to stay neutral throughout this whole mess, but during their conversation, Lisa let something slip that raised a major red flag. She mentioned having a hilarious surprise planned for New Year's Eve, and when my sister pressed her for details, Lisa only laughed and said, "Don't worry, it's going to be legendary. No one will ever forget this New Year's." Hearing that made my stomach drop. Lisa is not the kind of person to back down gracefully. She's always thrived on drama and shock value, and after the toilet stunt, I knew she was more than capable of taking things to the next level. I tried to push the thought out of my mind, but the idea of her scheming something to sabotage my party stuck with me like a thorn. As if that wasn't enough, my parents called me shortly after my sister's warning. They wanted to talk things through and gently suggest that I reconsider the no kids rule. My mom said Lisa seemed genuinely hurt by my decision and worried that excluding her kids could create lasting tension in the family. My dad, ever the optimist, even offered to help manage the kids if I let them come, as if that would magically make things better. I reminded him how well his attempts to manage them went at Christmas, and he didn't have much to say after that. While they ultimately agreed to respect my decision, I could tell they were disappointed. I hung up the phone feeling frustrated and more on edge than ever. I spent the rest of the day in a state of heightened paranoia. What could Lisa possibly be planning? My mind ran wild with possibilities. Was she going to show up at the party with her kids dressed as some kind of over-the-top comedy troupe? Would she crash the gathering with an elaborate prank, like releasing balloons filled with glitter or something even worse? What if she tried to send another package, this time something even more ridiculous or disgusting than the toilet? Every scenario I imagined felt more absurd and horrifying than the last, but none of them felt completely out of the realm of possibility given Lisa's track record. To calm my nerves, I triple-checked the guest list and sent out a reminder email to everyone, reiterating the adults-only policy and asking people to RSVP again just to ensure there were no misunderstandings. I even joked with one of my friends about hiring him as a bouncer for the evening, though at this point, it didn't feel like such a bad idea. My house is my sanctuary, and I'm determined to keep it that way. But the anxiety didn't stop there. That evening, my other sister called again. She admitted she was worried too. Lisa had been unusually quiet since their conversation, and we both know that when Lisa goes quiet, it usually means she's cooking up something big. My sister even suggested installing security cameras around my property, which honestly didn't seem like the worst idea at this point. The thought of Lisa showing up uninvited, or worse, sneaking around and trying to pull another prank, made me seriously consider it. I didn't want to go full paranoia mode, but at the same time, I felt like I had to be prepared for anything. The next morning, I woke up to an email notification. My heart sank as I saw the subject line, "A special New Year's gift, just for you." It was from an anonymous sender, and the body of the email was a single sentence: "Get ready for the laugh of a lifetime." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Was this from Lisa? It had to be. But what could it mean? Was this her way of taunting me? Was she planning to send another package, or worse, orchestrate some kind of public spectacle at my house? I spent the rest of the day feeling like I was under siege. I started preparing for every possible scenario. I made a call to my neighborhood association to let them know I might have an uninvited guest trying to disrupt the evening. I even informed a couple of close neighbors about the situation, just in case Lisa tried something outrageous that spilled out into the street. It felt ridiculous to be taking these measures for a family gathering, but after everything that had already happened, I didn't want to take any chances. By the evening before New Year's Eve, I was on edge. Every sound outside my house made me jump, and I found myself compulsively checking my security system. My anxiety reached a peak when I noticed a car parked down the street with its lights off. It wasn't a car I recognized, and it hadn't moved in over an hour. Was it Lisa? Was she sitting out there, waiting for the perfect moment to strike? I debated whether to call the police but decided to wait and see if the car left. Eventually, it did, but the whole incident left me shaken. Now, as the hours tick down to New Year's Eve, I feel like I'm preparing for a battle rather than a celebration. The countdown to midnight has become a countdown to whatever chaos Lisa might have planned. I've taken every precaution I can think of, but there's still a nagging feeling that I'm not ready for what's coming. Knowing Lisa, she'll stop at nothing to make her legendary mark on the evening, no matter who she hurts or alienates in the process. At this point, all I can do is wait and hope for the best, or at least hope that her idea of legendary doesn't involve anything that will require me to call a cleanup crew.